Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. For some of you, Friday means something. You may be at the end of your work week and you're going to get ready to do some partying. I know that, like many musicians that I'm talking to, Friday is the same as every day. We're not gigging, but we're doing something special and creative. So before I get started, and if you are a musician and you're interested in playing guitar, I'd love to thank my sponsor, 5 Star Guitars, for being there supporting me from the beginning. They're based in Beaverton, Oregon. And one beautiful thing about them is that Oregon has no sales tax. So if you're interested in buying guitars, shop them, check them out early. Go to www.5starguitars, find the guitar you're looking for. And if you need to ship it, no sales tax means that you're going to find it cheaper than pretty much anywhere else. If you're already an accomplished guitarist, but you're looking for some pro lessons, they have lessons from people like Jennifer Patton available. So check out 5 Star Guitars in Beaverton, Oregon. Go to www.5starguitars for inventory, repairs, lessons, anything like that, and let them know I sent you. Thanks so much for that. And now, I have to tell you guys, many times when you go see musicians, go see a new artist, and you're so fascinated by the show, something about that show inspired you, and you just thought, man, I would give anything to go backstage and talk to that person, find out what makes them tick. So check it out. That's what this show is all about. And this gentleman is one of the most impressive, innovative synthesizer keyboardists I've ever seen in my life. So if you've not heard of him, he goes by the moniker GLASYS, and we're going to talk a little bit more about his evolution here. So I want to thank GIL ASSAYAS for coming on the show. Is that how I pronounce the last name? ASSAYAS?
ASSAYAS, yeah, you got it right.
Okay,
Well, thanks,
excellent.
man. Thanks, Kevin. Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad
So,
to have
were
you.
you at one of my shows?
I know, you know what? You did one of the Vortex events with Jay Fell, and you talked a little bit about, what,
Oh, yeah.
and so everything else I've seen has all been on the internet.
On
Like most,
YouTube.
yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of people that discover you kind of get their first exposure to you through social media means, right? So I would love to know, first of all, you're not a Portland native. You've only been here a handful of years. You want to talk a little bit about where you grew up and where the musical origin started?
Yeah. So I grew up in Jerusalem, Israel.
Okay. Just
Um,
a hop, skip, and a jump from here.
exactly. You just take the metro, and so I both my parents are classical musicians, and I started playing violin at a very young age. I was probably like 5 or 6. My dad started teaching me because he's a string player as well.
Okay.
Um, and eventually, I was playing classical violin as a kid, and then eventually I started playing piano as well because my parents thought I should learn music theory and learn piano as a second instrument. Um, and at a certain point, I think when I was around 13, I kind of got really sick of playing the classical violin. There was a lot of pressure on me. My parents they're amazing people. They were super supportive, but they really wanted me to be like the next violin,
Sure.
virtuoso guy or whatever. And it just wasn't for me. I had that pressure. And um, at the same time, I was writing music on the piano. There was less pressure because it was like a second instrument.
Sure.
Um, and I just decided I wanted to stick with that. And I quit playing the violin. And,
Completely disappointed your
and then
parents, I'm sure.
what's that?
I'm sure you disappointed the hell out of your parents.
It was rough for them for a bit, but they understood. They understood,
Were they
and
were they strict?
they were pretty strict.
Okay. Yeah.
I would have to practice a lot every day, and it wasn't just me practicing on my own. My dad would it would be like a lesson with my dad every day for
Oh,
hours.
oh, for hours.
Yeah.
Was he the militant guy that was like slamming your hand down on the keyboard if you were, your finger?
No, he was never like very aggressive, but he was still strict.
Okay.
And as a kid, like all I wanted to do was like play video games.
Yeah.
I couldn't.
That's all every kid wants, right?
It was too much for me. I couldn't handle it, and I wasn't really enjoying it. Even though I've always loved classical music, and I would listen to it, and I would love the pieces that I played, but it didn't feel me like it was me. I felt like I wanted to write music and not just play other people's music for one.
Okay.
And then I was more drawn to the piano at that time because you could actually play all the parts. You know, you didn't have to just play the melody and then have an accompanist play the other stuff with you.
Sure. So you
So
you
that's
you
why I
got
ended
the
up.
sense of being that central one man band, if you will, early on. You felt like that was something that you were drawn to because you could be the sum of all the parts.
Yeah, well, back then it didn't even occur to me that I could do the things that I'm doing now. Like I didn't even really know what a synthesizer was
Okay.
until much later. But around that age, when I was maybe 14, I heard this jazz pianist play and was kind of blown away by it. I remember asking him for the sheet music, and then he told me, "No, man, I just improvised that."
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so that's when I told my parents, "Listen, I don't want to play classical music anymore, even on the piano. I want to do this. This is what I want."
At 14, they're like thinking, oh, another trend, another fad.
Yeah, I was obsessed with jazz music, and I started listening to Oscar Peterson and Bud Powell and all these jazz piano greats, and just I hadn't heard that music before. It just kind of blew me away. And then my parents they helped me find a really good jazz piano teacher in my area in Jerusalem. So I started taking lessons with that guy. He taught me all the theory, the jazz harmonies and scales and the basics of improvisation. And
Wow.
then I went down that road for years actually until I kind of got sick of that as well. But uh,
Just the straight improv and just you needed some structure then?
well, I after a few years of doing only that, really being obsessed with jazz, I think when I was after I graduated from high school when I was 18, 19, I discovered it. I kind of rediscovered pop music because as a kid you hear pop music all the time, but it never really interested me.
Sure.
Uh, the stuff that was on the radio, and
Yeah.
back when I was growing up, it was the '90s, and that stuff really didn't interest me that much. But I remember some friends introduced me to Radiohead,
All right.
and
Boom.
and
And
that's
that
when I really got into that kind of indie rock alternative music because it was just a sound I hadn't heard before, and it wasn't the same as like these top 40 hits I was hearing on the radio because they had like these really different chord progressions and cool synthesizer sounds, and
right.
that's when I realized, playing jazz standards is fun, but let's check out this kind of music. I haven't heard that before. And,
Did you hear elements of that in the Radiohead music, the complexity of Radiohead as compared to the other pop stuff? Did you hear some complexity that you kind of saw maybe rooted in the jazz stuff that
yeah,
attracted you?
there's
Yeah.
definitely like the album Kid A. There's some songs where there's like some jazz horn players
Right.
blowing on these really dark Radioheadish chord progression, and it's just awesome. And it was something I hadn't heard before at the time. And so there's something kind of really dark and mysterious about their music that
Yeah.
I was always drawn to that kind of darker side.
Sure. Man. You talked about being a kid really into music, I mean, into video games. I know that a lot of the stuff you've done in your covers have been video game covers, original old 8-bit video game covers, right? Um,
Yeah.
is there like from that era, and you grew up in the 90s, so like things like um, Dungeons and Dragons and those kind of role playing games weren't around so much anymore. Did you ever get into that at all? Like into uh, those?
Like the board game.
Yeah, yeah.
No, not really. That was never. I never really got the chance to. I guess none of my friends were into that, so I didn't
Okay.
really do that. But yeah, I would. I as a kid, I had a Game Boy, and
Yeah,
I would just be glued to it all the time. And I love the music. I always loved the music, even with those really simple 8-bit sounds.
yeah.
Some of those soundtracks really got to me, and I would go to the piano and start trying to play them. And so yeah, so now that I do these video game covers, it just feels really natural because it's something I've always loved to do. And I think I just realized a few years ago that hey, there's a big audience for this stuff. So
Huge. Yeah.
and
Did
I
you,
love it, so I might as well do it. Why not?
how often are you, because you've put a lot of material out on YouTube, it seems like, are you working on those kinds of things to figure out, okay, let me back up. Some of the covers that I've seen you do are so complex, and you're doing what 3 or 4 different layered parts are doing in a song, you know? So it's not just you playing the drums and the bass in one hand, but if you think about some of those covers, you know, the Metroid and Zelda and some of those things were really elaborate in the way that they'd stack those sequences. Do you kind of map this stuff out? Do you write it out and chart it, or are you just memorizing parts?
Yeah, well, I don't write anything, but I just memorize it. But
Okay.
um, yeah, so that's kind of a different process that I started a few years ago, where I started experimenting with trying to play all the parts at the same time. Um, when I started doing that, I didn't intend for it to like be a thing that I do all the time, but it got such a positive reaction that
Sure.
I started making more videos like that. So now I just have a lot of fun trying to figure out how to play a song and play all the parts
Yeah.
simultaneously. And you have to be, very, very careful about how you arrange it so that to make that possible. Because there are
Sure.
many things that you just couldn't do in that way. So yeah, not every cover lends itself to that technique. So, for some of them, I won't do it that way. Some of my
Sure.
covers it's either multi-tracked or I program a drum loop and then I play to that. But the ones where I do everything, yeah, I just experiment with it. I try to figure out a way to do the bass line, or at least like the most important notes in the bass line, with my thumb or my pinky, and then play some kind of drum part with the other fingers.
I
It takes a lot of planning and a very yeah, very intentional kind of way.
Yeah. I, it's such the opposite of the improv era that you went through. I can't imagine you just saying, "Oh yeah, I'm going to go play the Metroid theme and just sit down and kind of play roughly around that." It's obviously very put together. But I was thinking about those early days. You talked about going to the piano and playing some of these video game themes uh, and evolving. So you took your improv instruction from this jazz instructor in Jerusalem. You were 14, you said at that point, and then your buddy introduced you to Radiohead. So that's later on. That's like the end of high school.
Yeah,
Oh,
18. Yeah.
okay, all right. So were you thinking at that point, all right, I want to do that professionally. This is something that I want to do as a career. I want to be a keyboardist in Radiohead, or was that a band that attracted you, or more solo stuff?
Yeah. So so I actually formed a band around that time with some friends,
Okay.
and I started writing songs. That was the first time I would ever write actual songs with lyrics. Very much influenced by not only Radiohead but other bands at the time that I was really into, mostly British bands. Like I really loved Coldplay at the time, when it was just their first couple of albums. So we actually formed a band that started as a Coldplay tribute band,
Oh, really?
uh, back in 2005, I
Okay.
think.
When the world was discovering Coldplay.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
was before they. I don't really like them anymore, but
There's just
but
one song for me that fix you every time I hear it. Makes me cry. Can't help
yeah,
it. It's just,
great.
it gets me. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, their more recent stuff doesn't really do it for me anymore. But their first albums, there was something really authentic about them. That
Sure.
especially the first one, it's super mellow. It's just beautifully produced. It's like one of the best produced album from that era that I know of.
Wait,
Um,
was that playing a lot of commercial radio in Jerusalem? Were you hearing like
yeah,
it's interesting, right? Because in different regions of the world, they're exposed to such a variety of different music. Our friends in Canada, only can hear, like American music half the time because of the Canadian radio rules, right? They have to play a Canadian, I think 40% of the music or something like that.
oh
So
really? I didn't know
yeah,
that.
yeah. So I didn't know, in Jerusalem, if you're putting on the radio and you're hearing constant hits by Coldplay and Radiohead and, you know, Nickelback and, all that. But were there um, other rock bands that were getting consistent airplay there that maybe were inspiring to you? So you had your band, you thought, man, we make it big here. We can get our songs on the radio in Jerusalem.
Yeah, the radio was never really the way I was exposed to music. But in Israel, typically the stuff that's on in the top 40, stations here in the U.S. gets played in Israel.
Okay.
as well. So
So
um,
your
you
Coldplay
get a
cover band.
combination of both the Israeli pop hits and the international hits.
Okay.
I think the only genre that you don't really hear in Israel is country music, because I don't think I've ever heard a country hit played on the radio.
Not even an Israeli country hit. Yeah. Yeah. No, I would
It's
imagine.
not really country music. It would be like considered folk music or something. I don't know.
Were you playing out that band with the Coldplay Tribute? Were you guys playing gigs?
Yeah. So we started as a Coldplay tribute band. We got a great response. And then we started writing songs. And we're kind of similar in style to Coldplay, but I'd throw in a few of my like more complex things in there, chord changes, and I had a lot of fun doing that. And we eventually started touring the U.S. and got the attention of Nick Harcourt from KCRW.
Yeah, right.
And he invited us to play there, and it was a lot of fun. That was around 2007.
How did you get? How did you connect with him?
It's funny. We don't even know how he got our song, but he started playing our song one day, and someone messaged us, "Hey, your song is on KCRW. I just heard it on KCRW," and we were like, "Wow, that's awesome!" So we reached out to him, and we told him we'd love to play on his show, and he invited us.
That's cool.
That's still on YouTube somewhere.
Oh yeah, I definitely need to find that. Oh, this hasn't always been the brand.
Since birth, yeah.
It's trendy, man. There are a handful of people that are chiming in on this chat, so I might pop in now and then and ask some questions from them. This gal is asking if you've seen the young guy who solves a Rubik's Cube in his left hand while playing piano with his right. I'm sure he watched a lot of GLASYS on YouTube, and that's where he got his influence. But
I haven't seen that.
The people that are watching, in a minute, I'm going to show you some video clips of Gil that are going to blow your mind in some places where he's talking about being discovered right now by Nick Harcourt. But the way that he has sort of made his entrance to this area and really taken advantage of the internet in terms of like social reach. When you see what's happened with this guy, it's pretty remarkable. So just hold tight as he finishes this next phase, and then we're going to show you some music that's going to blow your mind. So, so Nick Harcourt brings you on KCRW.
Yeah, that was with a band, and it was a lot of fun. But I remember we had a showcase for Universal Records as well.
Okay.
But they ended up not signing us, and
hold on a second. Tell me about that process. So they call you up, or did you have representation, management, or anything at that point?
We had different managers, but no label or anything like that.
When some of the people are watching are bands that are fledgling bands that are trying to get a record deal, right? And so when you think about showcasing, we know what that means, but essentially it's an opportunity for you to go sell your wares there. You show how valuable you could be to a label in order for them to sign you to a deal. So in that process, when you get contacted, are they saying, "Hey, we'd like to see you play a live show"? Is there a show that you're playing that will come attend, or do they sit you down in one of those, isolated rooms where there are 3 people out there with their suits on, arms crossed, watching?
It was so weird, man. I mean, first of all, I'm sure this doesn't even happen anymore, but this was 13 years ago, and I doubt it would happen nowadays to an unknown band from Israel. But anyway, it was this one A&R who booked a really cool venue in LA for us, 12 p.m. We were all set up by then, worked with a sound guy, get everything set up, sounding good. And then 12 p.m. she doesn't show up.
Oh. And
so, so we're just kind of twiddling our thumbs waiting. And eventually she showed up like half an hour late. She just kind of storms in. It's like, okay, I only have 5 minutes. I couldn't get anywhere. So come on, play something.
Oh my God. The perfect inspiration to kind of get your creative juices flowing. Yeah.
Like, I couldn't find parking. Come on. Play.
So what do you play?
We're like, okay. So we play our best song, or the one that Nick liked the most. She was like, okay, nice. You have something that's a little more upbeat or whatever. You know,
Oh,
we played literally just like the whole thing was maybe like 7 to 10 minutes,
oh,
and like, okay, I'll be in touch. And then she just gets up and leaves. That was it.
that was it. Never heard from her
Yeah.
again.
No, so we did hear from her again. It was actually a producer who worked with us on the album back then, who lived in LA, who made the connection. So she talked to him and she told him that she enjoyed it, but she wants to just kind of keep following us, just see where it goes. She didn't actually offer us a deal or anything like that,
Yeah.
at the time. But it was a cool experience. It was my first time doing something like that.
All the guys,
And
probably, right? Were they all guys that you kind of grew up with in Jerusalem?
yeah,
Okay, so everybody's green. You just went in thinking maybe this is our big shot, and then it was such a crappy experience. But it's good that you can see the light in the first attempt. Yeah, somebody,
yeah. At the
Catherine
time,
Coates says, at least you can laugh about it. That's great. But there are, yeah, but those stories are so common. But a lot of times, if you're not in the business, you don't hear. You just think when a band gets signed, oh yeah, somebody saw them, saw their worth, and threw millions of dollars at them.
yeah.
So did you stay in LA for a while?
No, it was just we did a tour,
Okay.
and we just played another show there, I think, and then moved on to another city. And at the time, it was kind of devastating for us because we felt
Yeah.
like we were so close.
Yeah.
It was like, especially when you're on the other side of the world, it just feels like it feels like a dream. It feels like something intangible. It feels like, it feels like something that's so far away from you that you can only dream about, that you would never actually achieve. So to be so close, but then not get signed, I think that was the point at which the band started just kind of
Yeah.
going from there. At least, our energy, our the relationships between each other, and eventually the band broke up.
Oh, that's just that's the behind the music story for Gil's first band. Yeah, that certainly is a common story every time. Whenever you have an ensemble of people that have somewhat common goals, but not everybody is completely aligned, right? So your idea of what success might look like is different than the other guys. And if one speed bump that's pretty heartbreaking like that is enough to kind of derail it, obviously, did those guys go back to Jerusalem?
Yeah, we all went back home. I
Oh,
was
you
still
all did.
living,
Okay.
yeah, Israel. Back home, went back to our, you know,
Day
wedding
jobs.
gigs or whatever, and day jobs, and
God.
and and it was tough because we felt like, well, we were going to become rock stars, and then back to normal life. Nothing
Right.
happened. So yeah.
Do you
So
still talk to those guys?
oh yeah, we're good friends.
Okay.
Actually, was in Israel last year, and we played a little reunion show just for fun, just for friends. So it was a
Di-
lot of fun.
And you could have had all your friends show up to prank your buddies and just say, "Hey, look, we've got 5 minutes. We couldn't find parking. Just do your one song and then run out." Yeah.
I should have
Um,
done that. That was good.
so, I mean, do you feel like they have some regrets that they didn't follow you out here and can continue to pursue it?
Well, I moved here much later. This was
Okay.
we're talking about 2007, 8, and I moved here in 2015. So yeah,
So you stayed in Jerusalem another 8 years. Okay.
yeah. So the band was an amazing experience, but it also got me into really big uh, debt
Oh, I was wondering
because
how you were funding that tour. You were all just throwing money on a credit card?
it was not just the tour, but the albums we made. I was a
Okay.
kid when we started that band. I didn't really have a job, so some of the other guys in the band convinced me, "Oh, yeah, just take a loan from the bank."
Oh no. Oh no.
So for years after that, I basically had to uh, just work really hard to pay my debts and to the bank, and I couldn't move here until much later. And of course, I also met my wife around that time, and she was studying in Israel. So it took a long time until all the stars aligned and we could actually make the move.
Now, is she American or is she Israeli?
She's Israeli.
Okay. But so I didn't know
Yeah,
if she was there studying abroad and then you decided, to come to where she was at. So how was her feeling about it when you met your wife there? Did you say, my aspiration is to go back to America and, be a rock star? Did she
yeah.
did she know that early on?
Well, it's something we had talked about
Okay.
from kind of the beginning, but it only happened a lot later, obviously, and by that time she really wanted it as well. So
That conversation is always interesting to me, to hear how somebody starts a relationship with just so here's the goal that I have in mind. And if it involves, going to throw caution to the wind and risking it all, to go to play music, to find somebody that will partner with you and go on that journey with you is pretty remarkable. So kudos to
yeah,
your wife for, like realizing that dream with you. How
she's a nurse, and it's a good place to be a nurse. So she was totally on board.
cool, man. Well, again, kudos to her right now. This is a pretty scary time to be a nurse. So
Oh yeah, for sure.
I bet,
Anywhere, yeah.
yeah, that's a little stressful in, in your household, I'm sure. But does she play music as well?
No,
Okay.
no, no.
I didn't know she had that kind of outlet. So how does she deal with the stress? I mean, I hope you're okay with me asking about her. But I mean, I think a lot about my buddies that are, EMTs and firefighters and doctors that are trying to come home and deal with letting go of the chaos. If you're an amazing keyboardist, you can come home and throw down, or you're a drummer and you can just wail away on the drums. But how does she release all that pent up stuff?
Well, luckily she only works 3 days a week,
Okay.
so that gives her 4 days a week where she can just unwind and not think about that.
Cool.
And then, luckily, the hospital that she works at, which is a Good Sam Legacy,
Yeah.
they haven't had a lot of patients with COVID-19, so
Good.
it hasn't been completely hectic.
Good.
So she works at the ICU, and she likes the adrenaline and the action and stuff. She doesn't want a boring,
Right.
job where nothing happens. So I think she's been handling it fine. I don't think she's been
Cool.
too stressed out. Sometimes some days are rough, but
Yeah. Oh
most
yeah.
of the time she's been okay. Yeah.
Everybody has the rough days. I just, I applaud people that are in those kind of the crisis situations and can manage it, without jumping off a bridge, So, so you, in that process where you guys decide, okay, America is the decision. What made you choose Portland?
It was pretty random, actually. It was well, not completely random, but at the time, we were pretty sure we were going to move to LA, and I had friends in LA and knew a lot of musicians there. Um, but kind of at the last minute, we thought, everyone moves to LA or everyone moves to New York or
Right.
LA. Why don't
Right.
we do something different? Let's go somewhere else. Maybe there's another city that has a cool music scene, but isn't going to be as expensive and isn't going to be as crowded and not going to have as much competition for me as a musician.
Sure.
Maybe it'll be easier to start there. And then we started hearing these cool things about Portland. We heard this is a little more low key. It's kind of chill, but there's still a big scene, a lot of talented people.
All those
Still
things
on the
sound
West
right.
Coast. It's you know why don't we check it out? We can move there. We don't have kids or anything like that, so it wasn't too difficult to move somewhere. And then once we're in the States, if we want to move somewhere else, it's not such a big deal.
Eh,
So
Did you have temporary visa, like an 18-month visa to come over
I was born a citizen, actually, because both my parents are American citizens.
okay.
So,
Oh, nice. All right.
and then that's how we could get my wife a green card after we got married. A very long process, but eventually we could get her a green card and move
Okay.
here. Yeah. And
Cool.
now she's a citizen as well. So
Congratulations. That's it.
right.
I uh so Portland, you said, you're just gonna check it out. Did you come out and kind of have any connections with people here at all? Were there any friends in Portland?
Nothing. I didn't know one person.
Wow. That's I hope you know what me saying, like, your personality seems you're a little reserved, a little like soft spoken until you see you play music. That's where you can see that you just come alive. When I think about my friends that I've talked to who've gone into competitive music scenes, they're hustlers, man. These guys are, especially if they're like East Coast guys, Berkeley guys, and they show up in town and they're like, "Hey, man," just going after the gig, and
Mhm.
they've got I don't get that from your personality at all. So when you showed up, and you said that you wanted to maybe find a place that had a great scene, but wasn't as competitive. So what was your angle to try and get into the scene that you could be heard? What was your hope?
What was my end goal?
Yeah. Yeah. Were you
Um,
to find a band
my
again, or you want to do
goal
solo shows?
my goal was just to play and meet, cool people. And, I didn't really know where the road would take me, but I just figured I'll just start playing with people and hopefully I can make a living here, same as I did in Israel, but make a living here playing music and maybe get my own music out there as well. I was always writing music in English, and I felt like, okay, this is the place to do that.
Yeah.
Everyone speaks English. Uh,
So
so,
what was your first gig like in Portland?
oh man, uh, you know what? I was actually pretty lucky because I don't think there are many professional keyboard players in Portland.
Right.
So I consider myself pretty lucky because it wasn't that hard for me to get gigs right off the bat. First thing I did was I went on Craigslist and I actually joined a cover band
Ooh.
called Sensitives.
Okay. Sorry, I don't mean to cringe. I think Craigslist and I cringe. So anyway,
Yeah.
all right. So
So yeah, there were definitely a lot of weird things. That I responded to a few posts there, and there were some weird things I won't get into.
yeah,
But
no, you can get into it, man. There's no rules here.
no, I'd rather not.
Okay.
But
You try to repress those memories, put them out of your mind. All right.
nothing too horrible. But just there are also some weird people in Portland. Let's put it that
Yes. Okay. Well, you're still mostly intact, I'm sure. No limbs missing. So
way. Yeah.
yeah,
Um, but
you
this
did-
one cover band I joined, they were legit, and they had quite a few gigs, mostly like dive bars in Gresham and stuff like
right.
that. But the gigs would make like $100, which was
Yeah.
not bad for the beginning.
Yeah.
And I played with them for a couple of years, and I actually, I was really hungry to play, so I joined way too many bands at the
Oh,
beginning. I was gigging almost every night. Some of the gigs would be, in a bar here in Portland, and I'd play for like 3 sets and end up with like $20 or something like that.
yeah.
Some of those gigs were like didn't pay much at all, but I made a lot of friends. I made a lot of connections. I had a really good time. I would go to on the nights where I was not gigging, I'd go out to shows just to meet people, hear what the local scene is like. It was a fun time actually. It feels so far away from where we are now. Like
Doesn't it? It's crazy. Can you imagine coming to the US, not knowing about the pandemic, right? I mean, it just for some weird glitch and time warp, time space, continuum gets like rippled. You show up in Portland and you're like, okay, I'm going to go out, see some bands. I'm going to go play some music. And, there's no live music happening anywhere. People are, maybe 6 feet apart, hopefully with masks on, but afraid to talk to each other. And, it's a scary time to try and think about being a creative in a new environment for sure. When you first
yeah.
got here and you were meeting all these people, did you have recommendations from people saying, hey, oh, you know what, go check out this club, there's this guy playing that's really going to be, you should totally see this guy before you, as one of the new people in town? Were there anybody
Yeah.
okay, so who did you get to see that kind of opened your eyes to some Portland magic?
I think I would really enjoy the Sunday nights at Ron Tom's.
Cool.
That's some really cool bands. A lot of alternative rock, which is kind of my thing. And I remember there were some bands that really stood out. One of them was Samadams. I don't know if you're familiar
I
with
don't know them. No.
them. They've always been one of my favorites here. I still listen to their music a lot. They're really good. And I just found so many amazing musicians here, and I was excited, but also kind of bummed that when I learned that a lot of these musicians are really struggling
Yeah.
just to make ends meet.
Yeah, even prior to this, right? I mean, because it's a tough thing. It's a hard business to financially sustain yourself. I had to look at my calendar to see, because one of the bands that I loved that did Ron Tom's all the time on Sundays was Tango Alpha Tango. Did you end up seeing them?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
They're
so
amazing.
they're amazing. My favorite local band. They're on my show on Sunday, and I'm so excited about it, man, because Nathan, I think, is a really gifted songwriter, a great guitarist. And um, but um, when I first moved here in '94, I knew I was gonna have to work a day job for a while, and I asked around to find out if I could see musicians that were making a living playing music. Cost of living was more expensive than it was when I was in Montana, and I heard about this guy, Tim Ellis, who passed away a couple years ago, but he became kind of a mentor for me. I played a lot of gigs with him. And this dude played more shows than you could ever imagine. Man, I mean, there were gigs. He'd probably play, 10 shows a week, because on weekends he'd be a music director at a church on Sunday, and he'd do a couple of sessions, and then he'd go off and do a recording session, and then a show that night, and he'd had gigs in coffee shops and bars. He owned Kung Fu Studios here, Kung Fu Bakery Studios here in town. And then he would teach lessons. And so I sat and talked with him, and I said, all right, what's your secret? He said, well, I have 6 children. So I need to, and one of them's in Oxford. I need to play for the college, and I want to have a retirement place, in Mexico. So I want to hustle. And he had more energy than anybody I've ever seen. And I thought, if that's what it takes to play music for a living in this town, then I got to up my game. I mean, everybody kind of sees that. And the thing about that is that you found that you can spread yourself so thin by playing at so many bars and not make any more money financially. You maybe can extend your net capital in terms of relationships that you build, but you can also maybe cost yourself opportunities by spreading yourself too thin. So
Yeah.
you figured out ways to really use technology and the internet to spread your brand, if you will. Right?
Yeah.
And,
I've always had a lot of fun making videos. So yeah, so I started doing that more seriously.
and that may be a bit the perfect sort of liaison to have people see this next clip, because this is kind of where I understand things changed for GLASYS, right? Is this is one of the first real cool opportunities. All right, so let me do
Sure.
this. Okay, a little screen share here, and then we'll talk about how this happened.
I ain't even know it, ain't know it. Till they call you to the stage, then you seen the throw it, throwing that ass for days. Booty going up, down. I ain't got no problem spending all of my money trying to see what's up now. I can do this all day like it ain't nothing. Black car, party in the backyard. Shawty got the black bra on, tatted up. Bad enough, she a bad and she already know it. Yes, you know it. Yeah, yes, you know it. She a bad and she already know it. Yes, you know it. Yes, you know it. She gon' make me spend some money on it. Oh, bank account, I'll blow it. Go do a show then, bring that dough in. Pockets bigger than nothing more in. I'm at the stage every time, started going. I'm like, yeah, started going, yeah, started going. Booty hit floating, slow motion. Oh, I'm so gone up the phone. I don't know how I'm getting home later on. Like, I ain't even know it. Said call you to the stage. Then you seen a nigga throw it, throw it, oh, that ass for days. Booty going up, down. Ain't got no problem spending all of my money trying to see what's up now. I can do this all day like it ain't nothing.
Oh my God, that is so crazy, brother. I remember the first time I saw this, and there's so much going on there that first of all, I love that we've got your full screen GLASYS sub channel to share there too. Let me kill this live feed real quick. So TPain had this song and this recording already, and you took this segment and you said, hey, I want to add to this, right? Is that how that happened?
I'll explain why that happened in the first place. So
let's hear it.
I actually had a few people told me, hey, you should put your stuff on Reddit because some things make it really big there. So I put a different video prior to that one on Reddit, and it did pretty well. You know, it was kind of rising up the ranks there, and one of the comments I got was from TPain, and he said, "Holy shit, dude, this is amazing. You know, I want to work with you." And his name was like TPain for something. You know, it didn't sound like legit. It sounded
Right. You
like,
thought it's like some kid in like suburb
yeah.
somewhere. Yeah.
And people commented under him, you know, "Hey, this is the real TPain," you know. So I sent him a message. I was like, "Hey, thank you for, you know, for saying that, and I'd love to work with you." And you know, he would be really slow to reply, and I didn't feel like it was actually going anywhere. So that's why I made this video, because like I got to get his attention
Yeah.
somehow again. You know, let me take his music and do something with it.
Awesome.
And I didn't think that this video would be my most successful video, which it still is, because I've never surpassed that number of views. But
how many views is that? Let me go back and look. Like,
well, on YouTube it's like 700,000 something,
right.
but on, you know, it did
On
well
Reddit.
on Instagram and on Facebook, and it led to a million other things. So yeah, somehow this video, I don't know, on Reddit, it did even better than the other one, and it made it to like the very first page, the highest spot there. For you know, for a few hours, it stayed there, and it was just getting so many views, and kind of blew me away. I thought, oh my god, I made it.
Yeah. And he got a hold of you then, right?
Yeah, so that's when he was like, "Okay, talk to my manager. Let's set something up." They invited me to kind of hang out in LA. He doesn't live in LA. He lives in Georgia, I think. But
Okay.
you know, he's all the time there, and in the studio, you know, he'll rent all these different studios and just hang out there. So you know, I went to this really big studio with like a pool and the penthouse,
Nice.
and there were all these people there. It was not just him. It was like all his friends he was hanging out with. And
His entourage just camping out, waiting to see GLASYS show up. And like, did they vet you? They, hey, what's up, man? You're that dude.
yeah, but that's the thing, because I walked in there, didn't even feel like they were expecting me or anything. It's like, they didn't even say anything, you know. Like, he was nice.
You the
He
pool
actually
guy?
wasn't even there when I got there.
He wasn't. He just roll in, start helping
No,
yourself to snacks.
guys were like, "Oh yeah, TPain's at the gym. He'll be here soon."
Oh my god! Just
All
go
these
make yourself at
women in
home.
bikinis at the pool, and it just like felt like I walked into like some kind of hip hop music video.
I know. I was just gonna say, man. And did you want to just grab your phone out, start getting pictures of this? Going, all right, check out where I'm at right now. This is such a bizarre scene. Did you document a
I
little
didn't
bit?
want to be that guy who was like,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, I would have. I would have.
But
Unfortunately.
eventually he showed up. You know, he was like all panting. "Oh man, I was at the gym."
How come
And
everybody's always so late when they come to meet you? What's up with that? He's like, I had to park, man. Sorry, I couldn't find parking at my own house. I got 5 minutes, man. Show me what you got.
Isn't that part of the LA thing? The LA
Oh, that is
attitude?
part of it. It is, man. I know. But yeah, so did he was he gracious and say, man, thank you? Did he fly you out there?
Actually, no.
It was on your
flew
dime.
myself.
All right. Yeah.
But he was super nice. He's a super down to earth, nice guy. And what ended up happening, I was there for 2 days, but most of the time we were just hanging out. It didn't seem like he was really interested in actually making music. He was just more interested in just hanging out with everybody, you know.
Yeah.
And it's not that we didn't record anything. He would like, you know, they set up some keyboards for me, and he would just like hit record, just like play whatever you want, man. Then he'd go
What?
leave the control room, go hang out with his friends, come back, and it's like, yeah, you know, maybe I'll sample this stuff. Maybe
Oh
I'll.
my God. Wow. That's, I'm sorry, man. I just think I would have probably been a little put off, you know? I mean, really, because it's a great experience and you don't want to look a gift horse in the mouth, right? But
It was definitely not what I was expecting, and not what I was hoping.
You're thinking about this guy's going to be like militant. He's in the studio and he's busting stuff out, and he's like, you're working on parts together and rearranging things. Yeah. You want a production session.
I came there to make music, but he was there to do, for, you know, just to kind of hang out, and which is fine. You know, I got to meet some of his friends, some really cool people, and that was just for a couple of days. I went back home, and then
Wait.
we kept.
Before you went back home, did you ask him to play Zelda? Didn't you should have. See, that's how you could break the ice with him. Say, hey man, you video game guy? And he's gonna think you're talking Madden. But no, you're gonna say, no, like
He's actually a big video game guy. He streams on Twitch playing games.
I'm sure, but not old school 8-bit games.
No,
Metroid?
I think newer games.
Yeah.
I'm not sure because I haven't watched him. But
okay. Anyway, sorry, go ahead. So you left.
Yeah, I left, but we stayed in touch, and I still talk to him, and every now and again, I'll send him some kind of idea, and he'll usually be like, "Oh my God, this is amazing," and then not do anything.
Because he's too busy hanging at the pool with his homies, man. God, yeah, you should say, hey, I want to get together again, but this time, here's how it's going to go down. All right. You're going to have the dudes leave, right? It's just going to be you and me. We're going to lock the control room. We're going to get shit done. I want to work, right? And tell TPain what's up, man. And then send him a screenshot of that first time that he heard you and say, you said, holy shit. So I want to get that with you. Let's do this right now.
I've tried, man.
Speaking of because that testimonial, that quote is on your website where you've got TPain's, holy shit, this guy's amazing. There's another testimonial from an early bandmate of mine from Montana, John Wilson. Actually, Jonathan Wilson is, we went to high school together, man. And I was going to ask, have you guys connected, or how did his testimonial end up on your website?
Yeah, that was on the website he was publishing on. I forgot the name of the website. It was maybe Northwest Music, something or something like that. If I'm remembering correctly, it was a while ago. But
okay,
I think he heard my album or my EP at the time, and he did a review.
Oh, cool!
And he liked it, and he came to one of my shows, and yeah, he was. I met him at the show, but I didn't meet him. Back when he actually did the review. So
was that Colorado or was he in Montana?
I'm not sure actually. I think at the time he was here in Portland, I think.
Oh wow, okay, that's awesome, man. Yeah,
maybe it's a different Jonathan Wilson. It could be.
I'm wondering, stylistically, this John Wilson that I grew up with, amazing keyboardist. It was like years ahead of his time. And he was kind of the virtuoso that everybody in the school thought, oh my God, he's going to go on and make it. And he does write a ton of publications. He's got, an online YouTube channel where mostly all sorts of style sort of breakdowns, like boogie woogie stuff and ragtime and newer modern stuff. We used to do cover gigs doing like Herbie Hancock tunes and that was his.
Yeah, I don't think it's the same guy.
Okay. Well, I thought it wouldn't surprise me because, John's well regarded in the industry, but, I was
wrong, but, I don't think it's the same guy. He was a musician as well, but I don't recall him being like a keyboard player or he's not playing those genres that you mentioned. So,
well, the testimonial thing and the connections that you make through your postings, is that how the Rundgren gig happened then? You want to talk about Todd?
The Rundgren gig happened also kind of out of the blue. What happened was that I met his son who lives here in Portland.
Okay.
Rebop Rundgren.
Rebop is his name. That's cool.
Yeah. I didn't know he was his son, and to be perfectly honest, I didn't really know who Todd Rundgren was at the time.
Okay, nice.
In Israel, I'd never heard of him. I don't think he was ever played on the radio in Israel, but my friends who are like super into music know him, but other than that, most people probably have never heard of him in Israel. Anyway, so I met his son because his son would organize these basement shows. He had a nice space that he called the Moulin.
Nice.
And he would do these house shows, and I played there with a buddy. I wasn't playing my music or anything. We were just kind of jamming on my buddy's stuff. And I met Rebop, and we chatted for a bit. I didn't know anything about who his dad was or anything like that. And then maybe like a few weeks or a month later, he hits me up on Facebook, Rebop does, he's like, hey, my dad's a touring artist. His name is Todd Rundgren. He's kind of in a bind right now because the keyboard player for his tour dropped out at the last second. Would you be interested in doing this? And, so of course, first thing I do is I Google Todd Rundgren.
Oh, yeah. You're not having to dig too deep.
This is serious.
Yes. This is not some guy. No more Gresham dive bars.
Yeah. So, of course, I said, sure, I'd love to talk to him. And then apparently Todd emailed me and I didn't get the email.
Oh, no.
So then Rebop hit me up again. It was like, hey, this is really time sensitive. If you could reply to my dad, that would be great. I was like, I didn't get anything. So then Todd sent me another email and I got that one. And of course, I told him I would love to do it. And, then he replies with this set list of like 25 songs. I wasn't familiar with the music. The only song I heard before was Hello, It's Me.
Yeah.
But he didn't do that one because that wasn't a Utopia thing.
Oh, no. So you just did Utopia. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is great, man. I was looking at some of the feedback on the chat here. Lee McClellan says that you saved the Utopia tour. So,
well, the Todd Rundgren fan base is really amazing and very supportive, and I'm really so grateful for, ever since I started playing with him, they've been like so amazing and supportive of my own music as well. So thank you.
They have been. That's great. So because I know that you've done some work with Todd, I mean, of your own stuff, like you had him featured on your new, one of your new tracks. I would imagine after the chaos of trying to get the music together really quickly to save the tour, he could see that he had something really special in you. So tell me about that first time together that you two connected and just sat down and played. Was it?
Yeah. So let me back up a bit. I get this set list. I start listening to the music and then I'm like, oh my God, how am I going to learn all this in a week? It's crazy.
A week?
15 minutes long. They have like 500 different sections and then, all this proggy stuff. So I just had to shed like crazy,
Yeah.
I got up early in the morning. I'd be in my studio until 4 a.m. At one point, like the neighbors were like, hey, we hear this banging. I was with the headphones, but they could hear like the banging of the keyboard at 4 a.m. It was kind of a little stressful, but.
Did you tell him, hey, look, man, I got to go out with Todd Rundgren. Leave me alone.
Yeah, like they care. We're trying to sleep.
It doesn't matter. And sorry. See, this is my coaching. See, this is why I'm not your manager. I'm just getting you arrested for like public annoyance.
Hey, you want to be my manager?
Yeah. All right. So sorry. So you had to shed hard for a week.
But luckily, Utopia, they were around for a long time, for like a decade, right? And in the 80s, they started shifting towards like more pop music.
Okay.
Less proggy, crazy 70s stuff. So as I was going down the set list, learning the stuff, the music got easier.
Oh, nice. You know the hard stuff first. Oh, Lee says, he said he's been listening over 50 years and he still can't do half of what you did on there. So that it's nice to hear people that are really, they recognized what you put into it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I was really determined to do a good job. I realized, this is a good opportunity for me. And I love the music. I thought it was really good. I've always loved like Keith Emerson and 70s prog rock stuff. And this really had that sound. And that was my first time hearing Roger Powell, who was a Utopia's keyboardist for most of the time. And he was incredible, and I just had a great time, like learning his parts and transcribing and figuring out the sounds. And actually in early Utopia, they had a few different keyboard players. So I was trying to figure out a way to play most of the parts at the same time.
Both guys. Oh my God.
I like those kinds of challenges, as you know. So
as I do know.
I like treating it as kind of a puzzle game and figuring out how I can do this and that and at the same time. So I had a lot of fun doing it. Then they flew me to Woodstock. That's where we rehearsed.
Oh, wow.
And the first time I met the guys, they were super sweet. Willie Wilcox, the drummer, he hadn't touched the drums in like 30 years. And, of course, he shed really hard for the gig just to remember all and stuff. But I met him and Chasm, the bass player, who's been playing with Todd his whole career. So
really, okay.
totally at home there and used to it. And Todd, of course, as well.
Yeah. Yeah. But
and
did you get a chance just one-on-one to sit down and kind of early on, just get to vibe each other out personality wise, so that when you're on a tour, that's such an intimate thing, man. You're around each other so much when you're out playing. So did you get a chance to connect enough that he got to know who you were as GIL before you had to just be thrust out there playing shows?
yeah, we definitely connected a lot, and we actually shared a dressing room throughout the whole tour. So we had a lot of one-on-one time. Todd is very much an introvert, even more than I am,
Yeah.
and typically he's not a chatty guy. Like he doesn't make small talk. He's not like, hey, how was your day? How are you doing? How are you feeling? He's not that kind of guy. But if you want to actually have a conversation about something serious and concrete, he'll interact with you. He'll engage.
Right.
So it's he's I don't think he's ever really kind of asked me anything about myself.
Okay.
But if I engage in conversation with him, he'll get into it and talk about it. And I learned a lot of interesting things about the way he works, about the way he worked in the past, and his approach to producing albums and to
Oh,
writing
God.
music. And there's so much to learn from that guy because he's done so much.
So much, man. Yeah. His legacy is insane. That I was wondering if, because Rebop lives here too, that he felt like sort of a special connection, that his son recommended you, that you guys were connected here, and he's got to feel connected to Portland in some way, that his son is here right now. Portland is such a chaotic, crazy place. I mean, is he he's probably concerned about his own kid, if we were all out playing, it would be kind of nice, wouldn't it? Just escape a little bit, get back on the road with Todd.
I think this is the first time in like 50 years that Todd's not on the road. So I
Yeah.
wonder how he's dealing with this mentally. He's already in his 70s, and he's basically never quit. He never
Right.
took a break from the road. He's been touring practically nonstop his whole career. And I think he lives for that. He loves it. You can
Yeah.
tell when he's on stage, he's just a different person.
Yeah. You can relate
So
to that, can't you?
what's that?
I said, you can relate to that, can't you?
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. I don't know if I could do what he does,
That just relentlessly for 50 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could do that, or even in 1 year tour as much as he does. But
Right.
because I enjoy touring a lot, but I also like being home. I like being with my wife. So, I'm not sure if I could do what he does, especially as a front man as well, where
Right.
you have to just have all this energy every night. So
Yeah.
much energy you have to put out there.
He's not mailing it in.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are some special moments on tour that really stuck out to you?
Oh man, there's so many of them, but meeting the fans for one, and how supportive they were. So when I got the gig, first of all, I had no idea that anyone would really care that much who the keyboard player with, because I kind of thought of it as, if I got a gig with a pop star, then who cares who the keyboard player is,
Right.
I was playing now with I don't know, Katy Perry. Would anyone care who the keyboard player is? No. So I didn't know and realize that it would actually matter to people. And then I actually made a mistake where I announced it too early, and I got an angry call from his manager. He was like, "Take it down immediately. We're not ready to announce you yet."
Well, because the fans are so supportive of every part of his entity, they probably eat that stuff up, right? It goes through all the fan club pages, and everything gets posted on forums, and so they wanted to use it as an
I
opportunity.
realized how important the keyboard player role in this band is, and that it's a lot of responsibility, first of all, but also that I was kind of concerned that maybe the fans would be like, "Oh, he's not the real guy. He's not the original guy. He doesn't sound like him. We don't want to see shows or whatever." But it was the opposite. They were like super supportive, and and then that carried over to after the tour to my own music as well. Because when I did a Kickstarter for my album, so many of them supported me. So
wow,
really
man,
grateful for that.
That has a lot to say. It has a lot to do with you, right? I mean, if you had shown up just showed up because it was an urgency to get somebody in there last minute. So you kind of did it half-assed, and you showed up and kind of played the music and didn't spend as much time and passion, and were, from what it seems like, you were very respectful to the role. So I can relate to this a lot, right? In A Flock of Seagulls, I'm not the original drummer, and there's a rabid fan base for that band. And I look through all the forums that say, without the originals, it's just not the same. And, screw those guys, we would never support them. There are rabid fans that come out, and I win them over as best I can, both in my playing. And I want them to know, I definitely hold the original guys in the highest regard. My attempt is not to discredit any of that. I want to serve the song, serve the band, and hopefully keep the legacy right. And it's really been fortunate that I do, like you, have developed amazing friends that way, because they knew that I wasn't there to sort of capitalize on anything, but I was really there just to help support, and Todd probably appreciated that too. I would imagine, because he's had a handful of musicians that he's gone through over the years, and I'm sure he's had the gamut, guys that just didn't take it as seriously, and then guys like you that dedicated blood, sweat, and tears in a short amount of time.
Honestly, I still can't even believe that I got that gig, because it's just so random. Like, you'd think a guy like Todd would have a list of 50 keyboard players he would call before this random dude who just moved from Israel to stay.
Well, maybe
But
he has a list of 50 guys who he's worked with in the past, and they were not at the top of his want to call list. I mean, that's.
I think also a lot of the guys just couldn't do it because it was such short notice.
Yeah.
Most of them already had a tour or something going on, so I was really lucky. And of course I took it very seriously. I try not to half-ass anything, whether it's a little bar gig or just for my own sake, because I feel really embarrassed if I'm on stage and I feel like I don't really own the music. I feel really uncomfortable.
Good. Were you scheduled for a lot of solo shows at this point right now, or when you came back from the tour? Not during the pandemic, but I mean, when you came back, were you scheduled for just GLASYS shows?
No, I actually like right now with.
No, prior to the pandemic, like prior to things shutting down, were you planning on going back out with Todd, or what was your plan?
Yeah, well, I released an album last year, and I was doing a lot of solo shows. I was actually not planning a tour do a lot of solo shows right now, but I was supposed to have some other tours that got canceled.
Okay, of your stuff?
No, actually, I can't really get into it because none of it has been announced, and probably some of it's going to be postponed.
That was a test, and you passed. No, I'm just kidding. So Katy Perry. No, I'm just kidding. You mentioned the Katy Perry thing. Is that is that a gig that you would dig if the show was offered?
That was just like the first pop star name that. Well, I actually know some people who play with her. That's why.
Yeah, well, I've known guys that have played with her, and this week, I was talking to friends of mine like Steve Ferlazzo is the keyboardist for Avril Lavigne, and he's been with her for a long time. He's the music director on the gig, and I saw him early on in his tenure with her. Still continues to this day, to do these gigs, and with a pop star that kind of level, the Pinks and the Katy Perry's and the Lady Gagas and all those kind of gigs. Your role as a hired gun or a sideman is really specific, right? There's not a lot of room for improv at all in those kind of gigs. You're there to play a part, and a lot of that has to do with not only the performance, but also your appearance. There's an aesthetic that you have to have. And I just wondered if that's something that appeals to you, or it's something that, you think, I really like, getting to be GIL and being the keyboardist, for Todd or whoever these mystery guys are that you're talking about.
Yeah, I would definitely, I'd rather play with Todd than with Katy Perry.
Okay, cool.
Nothing against her, I'm sure it's a great gig as well, but that kind of gig, I think, doesn't leave you a lot of space to do anything else.
I would imagine it would stifle you.
Now it does, because no one's gigging, right?
Yep. Yeah.
How are you feeling with this time? Like, what are you doing to keep yourself busy?
This is it. I had to do this. I am very much an extrovert. I thrive on people's energy, and there were a lot of shows canceled. I think there were over 60 shows canceled for me. I had a massive tour, probably one of the bigger years that we were going to have in my lifetime, and came off the biggest year of my life last year. So I got so excited about that schedule because I have a web design business too, and I figured out a way that I could do both things pretty effectively on the road. And so when I had to kind of change perspective on a lot of things, because I'd wake up in the morning and more shows would be canceled by the time I'd wake up, and the band would be sending text messages and a thread lamenting the fact, and it started to mess with my psyche. I had to say, okay, all that stuff is outside my control, man. I mean, there's nothing that I can do about the cancellations. I want people to be safe. I want people to be healthy. I want to play music so badly, but not at the expense of somebody's safety, right? And they were throwing some gigs at us. Like we were supposed to be on a cruise, the 80s cruise in the Bahamas, when the pandemic really blew up here, the first week of March. And I was guilty of not recognizing the danger of the pandemic. So I was bummed out that we weren't on that cruise. And then the cruise came home with a lot of people infected, and some people didn't make it. And
oh wow.
And then it changed my whole perspective, man, because I realized this is a legitimate local threat and it's a global threat. I understood that, but changed how I felt about all these gigs, where I was eager to take everything that came my way. And I got so used to playing so much music and being around people. And so when I mentioned, I started doing this as a conversation with my guitarist. We just did a live Facebook thing, and we were laughing about what we would have been doing, because it's like hanging out backstage. Like you and me talking about this stuff is more like what we would be doing if you and I were hanging out, at the Revolution Hall, backstage, waiting to go on stage, talking about your experience with Todd Rundgren.
Yeah.
Our guitarist and I did that, and Jennifer Batten said, you need to do this as a podcast. It's just fun. It's a distraction for people. And I do want to create an opportunity for people to get out of their head, to get out of what they can't do and just figure out things that they can. And in this time doing this is like the 81st episode in the last 90 days, right? I've met so many people that have really done amazing, creative, fascinating things in their life that they wouldn't have had the time to do if it weren't for this pandemic. So, silver lining, if you will. I know it sounds cliche, but it really has been something that I've seen that, I'm inspired by. I can see that people are doing this, taking some opportunity, because the alternative, right, is that you live in fear and you hide out underneath your blanket and you're crying about everything you can't do. There's plenty you can do from your own home, and I'm inspired by so many people. When I dig deep into your stuff, I get so excited, man, because like it blows my mind. I'll tell you, it blows my mind in the way that you mentioned seeing an improv jazz person for the first time and it rocked your world. I was a silly butt rock, like Motley Crue, Scorpions guy in Montana with no clue about progressive jazz. My dad took me to see Chick Corea acoustic band when I was just about 17. And I was so floored that all I could think to do was run backstage and meet Dave Weckl, right? I just wanted to go back and say, what was that? Oh my God. And he was so cool to me. John Patitucci was on bass. Chick Corea was there. Chick was not really interested in having a young 17-year-old with a mullet backstage hanging out. And Weckl not only talked to me for like an hour there, but my dad had to talk his way. My dad took me to the show. My dad was apologizing to the security for their kid blasting through security. And Dave said, man, let's just go back. We'll hang at the lounge at the hotel. So we talked for 2 more hours. And my dad sat at the table next to me. And I just soaked up everything that I could, man. And it changed my life, not only to watch the music, but to see somebody in that professional level that was eager to impart wisdom and show an interest in development of a 17-year-old rocker, right? And I don't know that I would have continued to do what I want musically if it hadn't been for people like that, And you think about those inspirations, like just it triggered enough in you to want to go into the improvisational jazz element, which led itself to these other musical experiences. When Radiohead came your way, and I asked about whether or not you could see the overlap between commercial pop radio and the improvisational jazz element, you could see the combination, and that's what struck a chord with you, right? So those kinds of happy accidents are such wonderful things to explore. And you've had a whole bunch of them, right? I mean, you talk about random things, but I don't know how random that kind of stuff is. You know, the fact that Rebop lives here in Portland and happened to connect you with his dad for a gig that just, you know, needed GIL ASSAYAS. It's not like, you know, Rebop was just recommending some dude from a cover gig that he saw in Gresham, right? I mean, you've put yourself in this position to be ready for it, man, you know, and obviously there are other things in the works. I mean, the stuff that, that you're like, aptly, you know, just hanging on to until those things get announced. But when you see somebody like you in this industry, it's such a rarity because you're so humble. I love the fact that your humility is, you know, is a just an added quality to your playing, man. You know, I've seen you at, you know, the Vortex workshops, and I look at your personality on the way that you communicate online. And some of the guys that have these chops are just really conceited. They're arrogant, man. They're jazz snobs, you know. I love the fact you're willing to just, you know, like explore new things and you know, kind of like do some stuff tongue in cheek. The video game covers are insane. They're fun. I got to ask about some of that stuff because
Yeah.
I was looking at the thing that you did with Jordan Rudess, you know, and you have the dual keys thing going, but the module that has the single octave bass keys that you're doing with the arcade buttons, you had a name for it. What was that pad or that unit called? Arcadia. Yeah, and that was a custom unit built by somebody.
Yeah. So what happened was when I started exploring this technique, I was using an existing product that had like square pads.
That was on that first Tiny Desk video, right? That you had
Yeah,
that with the TPain.
yeah, yeah. That was not my first time doing it. I had a couple videos before that. So I you know, I realized people like this. I should keep doing it. It's fun. It's challenging. And then I realized that, you know, I'm going to need a more specific instrument that really caters to my needs for this, because that wasn't really designed for that. So I found this guy. His name is Matt Moldover.
Okay.
He lives in San Francisco, I think. He's a really talented musician and designer of really cool MIDI controllers and things like that he builds. You should check him out because he does some really cool stuff. He calls himself a controllerist or something like that.
Okay.
You know, he'll like sing or play guitar, but at the same time trigger MIDI controllers that do all these weird Ableton Live effects and stuff. It's really interesting. Anyway, I reached out to him and asked him if he could build this thing for me, and he said yes, at the right for the right price.
Right. Yeah. And you gave him specifics. You said, I need these are all the things I need. Did you want it to be scalable that you can add on if you needed to later on?
Well, not really. I was just thinking, you know, I don't really like the feel of these rigid pads.
Yeah.
That were on that Akai thing I was using. I wanted buttons.
Yeah.
That felt more like playing keys for the drumming. And he suggested, you know, arcade buttons. Even though, you know, there's a drawback, which is that they're not velocity sensitive.
Sure.
But they feel a lot better for me for finger drumming than these pads. I think pads are cool if you're like finger drumming like this, you know?
Yeah.
When you're trying to like, when you can't really lift your fingers high because your hand's stuck on the keyboard, they weren't really great for that. So he just basically took a mini keyboard, an existing product, and he added a whole other module on top of it, which has 2 rows of 8 arcade buttons.
Right.
And he made every one of them send out a different MIDI signal, and they kind of light up when you press them.
Yeah.
Which is very cool, which is exactly what I needed. And he did a great job with it. That was already, like over 2 years ago. I've been using it constantly. It's held up really well.
You map the MIDI signal then using, what are you using for software, like a DAW system to map drums?
Yeah, I use Cubase as my DAW, but it's a USB MIDI controller, so it doesn't produce any sounds on its own, but it has 2 different modules. The keyboard module can be routed to whatever I want.
Okay.
I'll usually route it to one of my analog mono synths for bass. and then the drums I'll route to drum software, or or usually Battery by Native Instruments, which is a
Yeah.
a drum sampler. So then I just pick the right samples for kick, snare, hi-hat, whatever. I process them, put effects on them, and figure out the mapping. For every tune it'll be different. I have to figure out, it's part of the fun for me, kind of like a puzzle game, figuring out where's the kick going to be, where's the snare. It's just so I can play this bass note.
It's amazing to even think of how you could plan for something like that. I was going to share just a tiny bit of like the Jordan Rudess thing that you have, where in that segment in Insomnia, you're doing this drum thing. Can I share a little bit of this real quick?
Yeah,
all right. So for people that are watching, this is kind of what we're talking about. Look at this thing. When you're putting something like that together, like how are you even thinking about mapping out all those parts? And I mean, you're obviously completely disconnected, right, left brain, right, left hand. You've got something.
Well, there's no such thing as really disconnecting. It's the same approach as playing a difficult classical piece on piano. And the same as drumming. You have to first really figure out how the things align with each other, and you start really slowly.
I guess just because of the combination of the melodic and the percussive instrument, I think that's maybe where I'm seeing the disconnect that just blows my mind,
Yeah, but it's not really this. I don't think any human can really split themselves. So it's, I get this question a lot. It's funny, but it's the same as anything else. You work it out really slowly. This piece in particular, there weren't that many drum sounds. So it was, if you notice, most of the time, it's just snare, hi-hat, and kick.
Yeah.
Eventually, sometimes I'll do a little fill on the toms, but so I just had this 3-finger loop going on, and then with my pinky I'd change the bass note, and it's a lot of work, of course, and these arrangements, I'll sometimes have to do many takes till I get it right. So that's why I don't always play this stuff live, because it's not always easy to consistently nail it. It's for every take that I get right, there are probably 10 takes before that I messed up. So.
Thank goodness to know you're human. It's fun to watch some of the Todd Rundgren fans that are blowing up on the chat right now saying mind blowing, refreshing, but mind blowing. One of the fans that said that when that Rundgren thing was happening and they were looking at who was going to be playing keys on the next tour, they said that there were fights amongst the fans about who the keyboard player should be. So that's how rabid those fans are. But
yeah, well then I learned that very quickly as soon as I got the gig.
That when you, man, I actually, I don't want to backtrack to Rundgren because I think
no, that's fine. We can do that.
Well, the really cool thing is the relationship has been left open. So when the pandemic is gone, obviously there'll be opportunities for you guys to record and tour together again, right? Is that something that you'd like to do with him?
Oh yeah, I would love to, of course. Yeah. I'd love to keep working with him. And I released an album last year, and he collaborated with me on one track.
I know, it's a great song, man. Yeah, when you're doing on that record too, so you're singing all those parts on the record too. So when you're touring and you're doing these shows of your own, is it just you accompanying yourself playing all this music, or do you go with a band? Okay.
Yeah. It would be nice to have a band, but I mean, I haven't done a lot of solo tours, but when I was doing it, it just didn't make sense to really have a band. Financially, it just didn't make sense.
Do you know Jennifer Batten?
Yeah.
I mentioned her. Okay. When Jennifer first moved here, she had been playing with Jeff Beck for a long time, and she fell in love with Portland, kind of the same reasons that you decided to move here. And when she first contacted me, I didn't believe it was her. So she called me on the phone and said, "Hey, I'm looking for a drummer. You were recommended." And I thought, this is not Jennifer Batten. And she said, "Well, I can get somebody else. It's fine." And I said, "No, no, no, no. I want the gig." But she, we did a band together. We did like the World Guitar Congress for our first gig and a good handful of shows. But she also had done all these multimedia presentations behind her where she recorded or she made videos, and she has a solo show, and it makes complete sense for her to do a complete one, independent show. She got tired of herding cats, and it wasn't that I was a difficult band member to herd or anything like that. Having to get members together where their schedules are aligned and people learn their stuff and they're easy to get along with on the road, and then having to pay for flights or travel and food, yeah, it gets expensive. So
Yeah.
I totally get it. And I would think for your thing, and with Jennifer's too, she's such an innovative guitarist, right? She's very creative. Her parts are so unique and they're her babies, So when she writes these parts that are so innovative and creative, if the other members in her band don't have that same vision, it almost is a discredit to the music, because they're not going to put the type of energy or emotion or anything the way she would or the way you would, I would bet. So you could have a wicked drummer out there and a wicked bass player, um, the only thing I could imagine is you having like horn sections that'd be supplementing your stuff, it's some really cool Radiohead vibe, right? Where you've got, you're singing and got somebody to add to without distracting the music. Look at me trying to put a band together for you. I'm not trying to.
I would love to. I have done shows with a rhythm section, and it's a lot of fun. When I did this last solo tour, I was doing a lot of this finger drumming stuff that you see online, and
Yeah.
it was very intense for me because it's so difficult. I couldn't really engage with the audience. I was just like,
yeah,
100% like focused,
yeah,
and it was in a way not fun for me because of that.
sure.
Because instead of just like loosening up on stage and having a good time, I had to like hyper focus on every note. And so then I realized, okay, next time I tour with my material, I want to have a band. Maybe I'll do a little of that stuff, but then I want to just relax and have fun and play and have other people handle the drum part and the whatever, So.
It's funny that a friend that's been watching quite a few of these shows, Catherine Cluth, said she'd really love to see you do movie scores. She could really see that being one of your wheelhouse pieces. Have you done any scoring?
I almost got a score, really cool gig, but someone else ended up getting it instead.
Right.
Someone way more qualified than I am. But anyway.
But you're in the running for some of that. You got your hat in that ring.
It's not something I'm actively seeking out. But if someone were to offer me a cool gig like that, I would take it. Same for video game soundtracks, because people constantly tell me, you've got to write music for video games. Like, okay. Where's the gig?
I'll just do it.
I'll do it.
Oh yeah. I'll have my friend Ryan Anderson. Ryan was a student of mine a long time ago. Amazing drummer. At 12, he came to me and was much better drummer than I was at 30. And he went to Berkeley at like 15, and he came out and went immediately. He was a drummer, but he got into composition, when he was at Berkeley, and came out and immediately went to work for Sony making video games for God of War, I think was the first project he did.
Oh, that's
awesome. But he was in at such a fledgling level that really it was, 100-hour weeks, not much money. And it really kind of, it burned him out on that part of the industry. He's incredibly talented and gifted. And I think that part chewed him out because he was young, he had aspirations to do a lot of that. So I think, it would be a tough thing to get in at the ground level unless you had really great contacts, and they could say, we'll make you the chief architect for, the sound design for this, instead of here, we're just going to put you in the assembly line of, 20 designers and, and have you just sitting behind a computer and, running parts. Yeah. Maybe, you're such a self-starter. I could imagine you, like submitting your stuff to Activision, and as they re-release versions of, Galaga, or, actually.
Well, I think nowadays there are so many indie developers who, or just, it could be just one person or a team of 3 people, and they end up making a game that becomes a hit.
Yeah.
So you never know. it would just have to be the right gig. It would have to be worth my time, of course, but also be probably a project I'm excited about. Like,
Sure.
I probably wouldn't want to write the music for like Candy Crush, but you know, it was like a video game that was really exciting for me that I would
Sure.
really get, yeah, you know, involved in, and what the word I'm looking for, really captivated by. Then yeah, I would do it for sure.
Yeah, Candy Crush might be a good retirement income gig. So if you, don't say no. Just so what do you do now when we've got the downtime? What are you working on? I just primarily putting the game covers on YouTube while you're waiting for the world to open
Yeah,
up again.
not only game covers, I'm doing other stuff as well, but I'm really trying to take the YouTube thing seriously.
Yeah.
As are you, I can see. Trying to put out more content. Like, when I was touring, I would maybe put out a video every month. Now I'm trying to put a video out every week, hoping to grow the channel. It's impossible to tell what's going to happen, because basically our fate is totally in the hands of the YouTube algorithm,
Right. Speaking of that, I really would love for everybody watching right now, if you haven't yet, go to GLASYS, GLASYS, and subscribe to his YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe and then dig through his channel, because there's
and subscribe to this one as well.
Yes, please.
That one.
All Access Live with Kevin Rankin. And mine's a lot longer in name.
How they say it? Mash the like button. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. What an influencer. Don't you wish you had just the arcade button that you could just push to have that happen? No, I'm fascinated by you, man. I think it's just really, really cool to see your journey, taking you here. It's neat to know too that you've carved a way for you and your bride to thrive and flourish in a city that's very competitive. And, I'm glad that Portland has adopted you and accepted you well for your talents. Jason Feldman was the first person to tell me about you, and he's a big GLASYS fan, and I'm grateful for him turning me on to your stuff, because I hope someday that we get to play together.
Yeah, me too, man. I've heard a lot about you, so it's nice to finally get to talk to you.
Yeah,
thank you for inviting me to be on the show.
I feel blessed, man. I think for those of you that hadn't seen GLASYS, man, dig through that YouTube channel. There's so much content there. So much fun. You'll get lost for the weekend. So speaking of the weekend, this is a fun weekend. I've got some great guests coming up. I mentioned earlier in this episode that Tango Alpha Tango is going to be on Sunday. My favorite local band, Nathan and Mary Trube, are going to come on, and they also have a band called White Bike. So they're going to preview some new music from that. Tomorrow, Jude Crossan, who is the vocal instructor at Musicians Institute in LA. I played with him a couple years ago, and he is an incredible singer. My biggest influence early on, when I talked about those influential progressives, and right out of high school, I started playing with this guy who was like Jaco Pastorius, in Montana. He'd gone through, to Montreux Jazz Festival many years in a row, and he really took me under his wing, and we were in the first fusion band together. So Rob Kohler, my inspiration, is on Monday. He's a professor now, and I can't wait to catch up with him. So a lot of great musicians this week, but and forthcoming, so many great people. I have more VJs coming up from the MTV era. Kenny Aronoff's got his second part on. Todd Zuckerman will be on. Dave Aberzees, the longtime Pearl Jam drummer, and lots of great guests, man. So I'm excited to have GLASYS be part of my stable of inspirational creatives. And I'm glad to see you smiling and that you're healthy, buddy. That's a good thing.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it. Thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun.
It's great, man. I'll have this archived, and I'll make sure that I put links to GLASYS, your YouTube channel, and also your website. And if anybody has other questions and they want to book GLASYS for their movie score, hit them up on one of those. GIL, ASSAYAS, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate you being here. And folks, stay good to each other this weekend. Have a great weekend, and keep smiling. Focus on the things you have within your control. I'll talk to you later, GIL. Thanks again, my friend. And see you at 3:00 tomorrow, folks. Have a great evening.
Awesome. Take care, man. Thank you so much.
You bet, buddy. Take care.